The human cargo that arrived in Virginia in 1619 had come from the port city of Luanda. Luanda, now the capital of present-day of Angola, Africa. Angola, Luanda. Back then it was a Portuguese colony, and most of the enslaved are believed to have been captured during an ongoing war between Portugal and the Kingdom of Ndongo, as John Thornton had wrote in the William and Mary Quarterly in 1998. Between 1618 and 1620, about 50,000 enslaved people, many of whom had been prisoners of that war, were exported from Angola. An estimated 350 of these captives were loaded onto a Portuguese slave ship called the São João Batista, more commonly known as the San Juan Batista. San Juan Batista. That ship was en route to the Spanish colony of Veracruz when two English privateer ships, the White Lion and the Treasurer, intercepted it and seized some of the Angolans on board. According to James Horn, president and chief officer of Jamestown Rediscovery, both ships were owned by a powerful English nobleman, the Earl of Warwick, Robert Rich. Robert Reich, it looks close. Robert Rich. Rich was anti-Spanish, anti-Catholic, and he profited from thwarting Spanish shipping into the Caribbean. The White Lion, which flew under the flag of a Dutch port known for its pirates, came to Virginia first in late August 1619, followed 4 days later by the Treasurer. So the White Lion came first, and then the Treasurer came right after that. The ship was en route to a Spanish colony of Veracruz, Mexico. So that means the African slave trade had already been started in America, right? The most cited account of those events in 1619 is found in that letter to the Virginia Company of London, which had run the Jamestown settlement since its establishment in 1607, from John Rolfe, one of the early English settlers there, most famously Pocahontas' husband. Historians do not know much about the men and women who were sold to yearly in Piercy or what happened to them. This is time.com. T-I-M-E, time. Though some of their names have been revealed, Anthony and Isabella. I've heard Anthony sometimes too, but Anthony and Isabella, sometimes Isabella with one L, stayed in present-day Hampton, Virginia, in the area then known as Elizabeth City, with two T's, C-I-T-T-I-E. They worked for William Tucker, a Virginia Company of London stockholder, and had a son also named William Tucker. Another woman who came off the Treasurer is identified as Angelo, and a 1625 census places her in William Pierce's house in an area outside the James Fort city called Newtown. Okay, fantastic stuff. That William Tucker, is that the first black American, first British black American, first English British black American? Is that what you're telling me? William Tucker? Good old William Tucker was born in 1619. That's the 1619 project, by the way. Now, the 1619 project has a huge glaring contradiction. The first African slaves in what is now Georgia arrived in mid-September 1526 with Lucas Valquez de Ayllon's establishment of San Miguel de Guadalupe on the current Georgia coast. They rebelled and lived with indigenous people, destroying the colony in less than 2 months. That's the 1526 project. I feel like the 1619 project is fantastic, and that's the direction we need to go in, away from 1776 and 1620, even 1607, the founding of Jamestown. Americans are dumb as shit. Americans are dumb as shit. So when it comes to Jamestown, when it comes to British, when it comes to America, there is apparently before 1776, the American Revolution on this continent, you had like 3 or 4 world wars. Anne's War, William's War. You had these French and Indian, you had 4 or 5 French and Indian wars is what was called over here. But they're world wars. They're in India, they're in Philippines, they're all over the place. So the first African slaves, at least, we got an earlier date here, 1526. So we could have a 1526 project. And actually, I think that's probably the best argument I got. A 1526 argument. The earlier, people get all pissed off as if like she's rewriting history or some shit. I mean, I was in Spalding University and at the teacher training class, and I'd ask all these would-be teachers, what can they remember about the American Revolution? Just let's do a timeline. What dates can you just spit out some dates? And nobody could think of anything. Nobody could spit out anything. It's like not even the 4th of July. Y'all never even heard of the 4th of July, 1776. I think it's just 9/11. That might be the only date that Americans remember. So instead of being all pissy and just saying, oh my God, she's trying to turn everything upside down, the 1619 project is fantastic. It's going in the right direction, okay? So ultimately, when it comes to history, when I love history of the Americas. Now, I have Anglo-Saxon history, but also have German history. My German history only goes back to 1869, after the Civil War. My Anglo-Saxon history goes, back a ways. I got African history, too. It goes back a ways. And so I've been, white, black American for quite some time. My, roots run deep. My roots run deep. I don't know if I was there during the French and Indian War, but before George Washington became an American, before Daniel Boone became an American, they're all a bunch of British fucking assholes pledging allegiance to their fucking king, or their Queen Anne, or King William, or who the fuck ever. So while they were kind of doing their own thing, they're also kind of not doing their own thing. So, there were some people that came for the freedom of religion, but they wanted to have real authoritarian, teachings. So it was like, we want the freedom to be authoritarian. All right, I guess that's, is that what we're about? So the first thing I want to mention about the 1619 project is this. When it comes to history of the Americas, you got North America and you got South America. You got North America, you got South America. And what happened? Did those people come on the Beringer Strait with that ice bridge? Is that what happened? The Ice Age, and then people just got their, put on their parkas and put on all that and crossed. Went from Russia on over to Alaska. Is that what you're trying to tell me? Is that what you're trying to tell me, America? Because there's also evidence that says there's people in South America. And it wasn't just on the West Coast that people were landing. There's people landing on the East Coast. You got the Vikings who landed there 20, 15 AD. So we could have a 1015 AD. I wanted the written record. But there's carbon dating that says the Vikings had discovered America in 1000 AD, and that's the eastern side. So you got people on boats who's landing on the western side, people on boats who's landing on the eastern side. You got all this archaeology. You got radiocarbon dating. You got all these arrowheads. You had these mastodons and all these dinosaur bones. So when I think of the history of the Americas, I think of it as joint South and North America. Because 50,000 years ago, everybody's in Africa. So to get to North or South America is equally, an incredible feat. Perhaps, if you could just go over the Arctic, then maybe they just went, through the Antarctica, right? You never know. And I don't think that we've come to a conclusion on what Chapter 1 is. Kentucky history pissed me off because Chapter 1 was, Native Americans here, there, blah, blah, blah. They called it prehistory. Native Americans been around for 14,000 years, and that's prehistory. But 500 years ago, 1492, right? 30 years ago, Christopher Columbus came here. So white people have been around here 530 years, brown people 14,000 years. Why does that matter? Because if you want to start with the history of the Americas, you could start at the climax, because the more I think about, what John Adams and George Washington and what they did, they were actually superb, very fucking progressive. We don't even pass a Bill of Rights. We're too fucking dumb of Americans to even pass a brand new Bill of Rights, to keep the ones that we got and to add a couple more freedoms. We just said, what they came up with in, not even 1776, 1789, 1787, because you had the Articles of Confederation, and then we won the war, but, shit was fucking breaking down, Whiskey Rebellion, Shays Rebellion or something, and then Washington, then they came back and kind of said, all right, fuck the Articles of Confederation, we're going to do this U.S. Constitution thing. And because they had, fucking Adams and Washington and all these war heroes sign off on it, it's like, all right. We'll let the Constitutional Convention, which just overthrew the first original American government, we'll let it go. We'll let it slide. You got a permission slip from George Washington? All right, go ahead. Form a brand new American government if you got permission slip from George Washington. So, instead of, getting pissy about 1619, let's see how better your history is. I got several fucking dates. 1526. I got a 1526 project. We could also do a 1513 project. You had Ponce de Leon in Florida. Is that when he first discovered it or established it? I don't know. But Ponce de Leon in Florida were dancing in 1513. We could have 1511 project. King Ferdinand just said, go get the damn gold. Who cares? Get it how by any means necessary. 1513, Ponce de Leon lands in Florida. 1511, King Ferdinand. 1526, that's the first black African slave that was taken to North America. And it was the Spanish, the damn Spaniards, motherfucker. The damn Spaniards are the worst out of all the conquistadors. You had French conquistadors, Dutch and Swedish. You even had a Swedish colony up in New England, and you had the Dutch colony, and you had the French, and you also had, the English, and where was I going with all this? The damn Spanish, 1503, you have the Dominican, the Paraguay. There's another date. Let's have a 1503 project. Just the Spanish were such fucking bloody, genocidal, massacre motherfuckers. They were like, nobody's paying attention to what's going on here. And they had biographers, and they had like the biographer like walking right next to him and still, committed all these atrocities. And sometimes the king and queen would be just appalled by a massacre here and there, and they would get recalled, and then, another general or somebody was put in their place. But most of the time, these massacres just happen willy-nilly with no regard to any life whatsoever. So 1503 massacre, 1504 massacre, Ponce de Leon, motherfucker, he just got there. Ponce de Leon, 1504, you're already committing massacres, so we could do a 1504 project, right? And he was in Florida 1513, but he did a, Higuey, Higuey, massacre, Higuey. Dominican Republic is called Jaraguay, Jaragua, 1503, 1504. Juan de Onate, Hernando de Soto, Coronado, Cortez, Hernan Cortez, 1521. Motherfucker just wipes out the fucking Aztec. Burns down his own people. The Spanish ship forces them to fight the Aztec, and then they vanquish him, and they conquer the entire Aztec. And that's just like that other guy with the Inca, Manchu Picchu, fucking Pizarro, in 1932. That motherfucker, Pizarro, he just wipes out the entire Incan civilization. We could do the 1532 project because, what the fuck happened to Manchu Picchu? When I look at all the archaeology, all the old stuff, I'm not impressed by the petroglyphs in, Conejos, Castilla, right there on the Rio Grande by the Lobato Bridge. I'm not impressed by those petroglyphs. But Manchu Picchu, you have all these incredible stone works all the way on top of mountains. All these stone works on top of mountains. Incredible stoneworks. And I guess anybody could just kind of stack rocks here and there, but ultimately it looked like a castle. It looked like it was strong. And, where did those people go? Manchu Picchu is a fucking one of the wonders of the world. And Pizarro, the Spanish, just fucking wiped him out. De Soto, Cortez, all these bastards. De Soto was in, Alabama and Florida and shit. Coronado, that's Arizona, New Mexico. Hernan Cortez, it's Mexico and the Caribbean. No telling what happened on all those islands. We know a couple things with Cuba and Jamaica and Haiti and the main islands. But for the most part, just, wash, rinse, and repeat whatever they did with the main islands. You could just assume these tiny, smaller islands that, nobody really even sniffs their nose at. Don't even know the names. Navarra Island. No telling what happened on Navarra Island. More to come, but essentially I got 3 dates. I got 3 dates here for the 1619 project because, you don't get mad, you get even. But ultimately, where does chapter 1 begin? Chapter 1 begins 14,000 years ago when the first American Adam and Eve got to America. That's where American history begins. And it took us to, 1776. It took us nearly 1,800 years. Well, it's 14,000 years ago. So whatever, it took us, several thousand years before we come up with a constitution and 3 branches of government. But the reason why America, continues to survive is because we're correct. We got it right. Nobody wants to live under a monarch. We need constitutions. We need democracy elections. It's the worst kind of government. It's necessary evil. If a tyrant can't justify what direction he wants to send his people, then what the hell? So the 3 dates, real quick. 1492, December 25th, 1492. Let's do a 1492 project with Christopher Columbus. I think just start with Columbus. Just start with the very beginning. With La Navidad on the Santa Maria. You had the Pinta, the Nina, and the Santa Maria. Santa Maria is going to sink. They're going to take parts from the Santa Maria and build La Navidad. The very first colony, European colony in the Americas, was La Navidad. Columbus is going to leave 20 to 30 of these guys behind, and then he's going to take off and go somewhere else, and then they're going to build a colony, and ultimately 36. There's 36 men. They just were plundering too much. Raping, kidnapping, stealing too much. They were just being like those Nozo Chomos and Costello. Just stealing, kidnapping, raping, probably murdering, right? 36 men in La Navidad. And then within just a couple months when Columbus goes back, they're all gone. The fort is gone. I don't know if it's burnt down, scavenged, but it's gone. There's no colony, no men, no fort. But we can learn something from that. We can learn when did the Americas go from French to British to America. Because when I read about British history, the British don't move me. I am not moved by the British. I do not think of myself as, when I think of the French and Indian War versus Britain, basically it was might versus, might is right. It was a war of conquest. When I think about Ukraine, it seems to be, if the referendums go through, it's they're trying to take territory. Might is right. And I thought we got, rid of that shit. I thought that shit was long gone. But apparently North America was ripe for the taking. Whoever had the bigger guns, whoever was more bloody, whoever wanted it more, whoever was willing to commit more atrocities. 1497, there's the British John Cabot. You have Jamestown, 1607. You could just have a Jamestown project. I don't think America knows their history. Jamestown, didn't they turn into cannibals? The Pilgrims? Or that's Mayflower, right? So that's 1620. So 1619 is brilliant because it's 1 year between, before 1620. But I don't even think people know 1607, 1619, 1620. I don't think they know any of this. Estimated carbon dating for the Norwegian Vikings discovered America is 1014 to 1021. So we could say, 1020. So about 1000 AD, 1020. The Cliff Palace, we got 1190. The Cliff Palace is being formed in Colorado. 1150, Cahokia. They had 10 to 40,000 people in Illinois in a place called Cahokia. 1150 AD. So we could do the 1150 AD project. So my point is, 14,000 years ago, we'll do BC, okay? So that means you got to subtract 2,000, right? So that's 13,000 BC, or 12,000 BC. That's when the first American man or woman came to American shores. We're going to assume there weren't any people here. We came from Africa, and it was 14,000 years ago. So anything that gets us closer to 12,000 BC, I think a 1019 project, a 1150 and 1190 project, the Cliff Palace, Colorado, it's just like a pueblo up in the mountains. They just found like a little crease in the hills and built some pueblos. But it's wonderful. It's like kind of like Machu Picchu. 1150 with Cahokia, 1019 with the Vikings, 1190 Cliff Palace. I guess that's the Anasazi. Is that who that is? Or the Apache or the Comanche? So my three suggestions is 1587 Virginia Dare. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, just because I was thinking English speakers. Who's the first English speakers? We just talked about that Hunter. What was that guy's? Hunter something? I want to say Virginia Dare is going to be born first. Virginia Dare is the first American, English, British person born on American soil. And so that's according to our Constitution, according to the American Constitution. How did we all become Americans? Every person in this country. We didn't have to pass a test. We didn't have to pass a civil service. We didn't have to run a mile. No civil service exam. We didn't have to, know the three branches of government or know anything about anything. The only reason we got to become Americans is because we was born on this soil. And with that in mind, Virginia Dare was born on this soil at Roanoke Island. So 1587, 1607, and December 25th, 1492. I really like that because you got a specific date, but you got August 18th with Virginia Dare, 1587, and the founding of Jamestown. I think there's a specific date for that too. May 14th, we'll say 1607. So I like all those because that's written records, specific dates, and which one is the earliest is, fucking Columbus. We know a lot of shit about Columbus. Columbus is one of the biggest pieces of shit. All the people that he killed in Haiti. He started the human trafficking trade, not just, the slave trade. And then once they ran out of Native Americans, then they started reaching into the African slave trade. So I think let's just start from the fucking beginning of, the European. Why stop, at 1619? The Taino people, they gave us the word barbecue and hammock, canoe and tobacco and hurricane. We still say barbecue today. We still say hurricane and tobacco and hammock and canoe today. Can you canoe? Can you canoe? Tobacco, hurricane, hammock, barbecue? Barbecue. What would the Taino people know about barbecue? They're just talking about grilling meat, not with barbecue sauce. They didn't have barbecue sauce, right? I mean, tomatoes were around. They knew about tomatoes. North America, tomatoes were indigenous to the American continent. The Europeans didn't know shit about what the hell's a tomato? They didn't know about a tomato or a potato. They didn't know about corn, vanilla, cacao, chocolate. La Navidad is at Cap Haitian. I think it's like 5 miles by Cap Haitian. And they pulled the fucking Santa Maria up. So we found the Santa Maria ship, which, ran aground. And so they was only able to take whatever they could. Built La Navidad, and the rest of it just sank into the ocean. And I want to say it's still there. It's there in Cap Haitian. So, yeah, there's a lot of dates, right? Lots of things we could pick. Quebec is going to get founded in 1608. We could do a Quebec project. Cortez, Coronado, all these fucking massacres. Really, you just got to pick one of them and kind of hone on them. And maybe I picked 1503, the Jaraguay massacre. I think it was in the Dominican Republic, Spanish. So that's interesting. Let's take a look at Jaraguay. Who can be, all pissy about the Jaraguay? What? You can't be biased about the Jaraguay massacre. Virginia Dare is the first English born on American soil. So I think Virginia Dare is the first American, right? Virginia Dare is the first American that we know of. The first black African slave that was taken to Africa was 1526. They could have had a child. 1619 project, we found out, right? There's a child, Anthony and Isabella. They had a child. So 1619, but that's Virginia Dare would be before 1619. So there you go. Those would be my dates that I would suggest. And let's race all the way back to the very beginning. Let's see if we could find the first proto-American Adam and Eve. Let's see if we can find this first proto-American Adam and Eve. And how come we don't even know chapter 1? That does piss me the fuck off, because let's just keep going back until we know for certain. How far can we go back with our timeline and know without to a 99% confidence that we know that A, B, C, D, E happened? And I think the more that we hone and the more that we, figure this shit out, maybe I should write a fucking history of America and just kind of compile all my understanding of the archaeology and where the timelines begin will give you some kind of suggestion of where the settlements and the people began. But ultimately, you'd have to look at each one of the archaeological digs and read all the boring stuff. But frankly, we don't have a good chapter 1. So we don't have a good story of America because we don't have a good chapter 1. But figure out where we are, 12,000 BC, and then 11,000 BC, 10,000 BC, and then, go up 1,000 years. That'd be fun to think of every 1,000 years as an epoch. We've been here for humankind has been on these 2 continents for 14,000 years. Every 1,000 years, we brought something different to the table. And we're still here. We're still here. Christopher Columbus is going to capture 6 natives and enslave them. He's going to go back to Spain with 6 natives. So goddamn Christopher Columbus started the fucking slave trade. He was basically he tried to sell the new world to Spain and Europe. My God, these natives are so kind. Anybody can come here and just enslave them and they'll do whatever you tell them. Las Casas, he wrote a bunch of stuff about how they would pierce a boy with a lance, slash legs off another boy or other boys as they ran. Ojeda, Orondo, the Jaraguá massacre, the 1503 July. This is in Haiti, Dominican Republic. 1503, the Jaraguá massacre. This is terrible. This is awful. The first European settlement, La Navidad. I was going to make it quick, but I guess that I got to the point, right? I got to the point. Under 30 minutes. 12,000 BC is when the first American man and woman, begins. So therefore, that's when American history begins. And I like 1619 project because it just keeps taking us a year. It beats the Mayflower, right? So 1619, if you want to say the Mayflower, if you're big into the Mayflower, which I'm not big into the Mayflower. If anything, when I think of the 1600s, the Mystic River Massacre of 1637 comes to mind. And that's just the English just killing men or old and women and children. The warriors, the young men were all gone. Or the younger men were all gone, fighting a battle. The Cove of Meadows. The Cove of Meadows. Cove of Meadows. That's where the Norwegian Vikings had discovered America. And there you go, That's it. 1019 Project,